Thank you so much indeed, Maura. It is a pure joy to be with you all here today, tuning in from across the Atlantic, and I hope life is lovely today in New York. I know indeed that you're coming up to the middle of your day now, and of course I know you're not far off your weekend as well, so it's a perfect time to focus on this particular topic. When I spoke to Maura and Jennifer and Lane about the stage at which you're all at within your careers, it sounds like that you've got a fascinating road behind you as well as ahead of you. And what I really want to do today is to focus on, for you to focus on you, and independent of the age or stage of your business or of your career or of your PhD or of your job or anything else like that. Today is all about you. And I'm going to talk to you about having resilience both in life as well as in every other way. So what I'm going to do here is that I am going to share my screen. And what you're going to see then are the slides that I'm going to share with you. So I'm just going to move all of us over here. Okay, so let's take it from the top. This logo here is one that I got from a company whereby we went into the company to help them build their organizational resilience. And in order to do that, in order to build an organizational resilience, then you need to start with the individual people. So we started building theirs, and then from there we moved it up. And I don't know how many of you might be familiar with this organization, but it's St. Michael's House in Dublin. And it's an organization that is one of the biggest in the country that takes care of people with intellectual disabilities. And little did I know, but when I found out, I started working with them, and then I found out afterwards that actually my mother-in-law was a teacher there years and years ago when she used to help people with special needs. So this particular logo has a nice place, I think, in the whole context of what resilience is about. But in particular, what they felt resilience was putting your hand on your heart and reaching for the stars. So that is very much the context of what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to skip past the next slide because Maura has done a fantastic job of taking you right around my career there in pictures. So thank you very much for nailing that one, Maura, and doing so very, very well. Well, what I'm going to talk to you about today in the context of resilience, it's not something where I've just looked at a couple of definitions and thought about where it sat in among the conversation, or also am I just going to talk about an individual piece, like I say, not just going to talk about career and work, but what I'm going to share with you today comes from all of these domains, from disability, from unemployment, from managing people, from lockdown, from personal finance, from personal development, productivity and relationships. We're going to look at all of these. And this is where I truly think you can build a really strong sense of resilience. So before I move on, one of the reasons that I started working in this area was that I was once asked to speak on this, and I thought about, okay, what exactly is resilience? How would I define it? So some people say bounce back ability. My ability to bounce back from adversity. The thing is, though, is that I don't think that would fit you guys, right? I really don't, because I think that of the characteristics of the group of people here today, I would say it's not that you necessarily face adversity and overcome it all the time. I would say you do that anyway. But what about when you want to go forward when there's nothing stopping you, but nothing pushing you either? And that is what I believe resilience really is. It's having an ability to move forward when the force behind you isn't necessarily pushing you. Let's say you want to go for promotion. Let's say you want to start a business. Let's say you want to produce a thesis. Let's say that you want to get any type of project off the ground. There may not be anything stopping you, but at the same time, if there's nothing pushing you, well, then you need resilience to drive forward. So that's going to be the context from where I'm coming from today. So let's take it from the start. Now, what I'm going to give you is I'm going to give you 6 letters that of a model that we built around resilience. It's called PREFER, P-R-E-F-E-R, and I'm going to take you through each letter in turn. So the first one is the hardest one, and that is P for perspective. It's the hardest one to tackle because this will make the biggest difference as long as you're willing to take it on. So let's start off there. The second time I met Maura was at the IIBN conference in 2014. Now, I'd met her before that in 2013, like she said, at the Irish Consulate. But in the conference of 2014, I've told this story like countless times. So I'm actually glad that Maura's here so she can back me up on it. The very last speaker at that conference that day was Mark Pollock. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is the guy behind Run in the Dark. So Mark, after he was born, he became blind in one eye. He became an explorer, then he got struck down and he became paraplegic and from the waist down, and then he became blind in the other eye. And this was the person who came in to speak to us at the end of that conference. That was Friday evening, Manhattan. Everyone was looking forward to the next part, which was going to be talking and drinking and having the chats for hours thereafter. So, the mood was high, the atmosphere was light, all was good, until Mark answered or got to the Q&A. When he got there, I'll just never forget what happened. So, some questions were asked, like, what's been your greatest inspirational moment, and he does a lot of research in order to help people, like in his own position, to learn how to walk. So what's inspired your work, and all these sorts of questions, until the last question, because you couldn't follow this one. A man put up his hand and he said, hi Mark, my name is whoever. He said, last week, my nephew was in a surfing accident and he fell, and the only thing now that he can move are his eyes. What can I say to him to make him feel better? And you could have heard a pin drop that day. You could have heard a pin drop, because everybody straight away stopped. The environment completely changed as everyone said, okay, what's he going to say now? And it's hard to describe this, but despite the fact that Mark couldn't see, he looked straight back at the person that was asking the question. And his answer was, nothing. You can do nothing. There's nothing you can do to make him feel better. But he said, what you can do is help him accept his present. Because right now, that guy's thinking, why did I get in the surfboard? Why was surfing ever invented? Why me? Why not somebody else? Why this? Why that? Also, he doesn't know what his future looks like. Will he be able to walk? Will he not? There's a variety of things he's thinking of. He said, but the one thing that you can do to help him, maybe not feel better, but just to help him, is help him accept his present. It's help him accept his present, because then, it's only then can he actually move forward. He said, don't tell him it'll be all good, because it won't. But don't tell him it'll be all bad, because it won't either. Just help him accept his present. And you see, the thing is that is the number one thing we can do to build our resilience, is actually to match our perception with our reality, to match the two together. It is when you can actually accept the position that you're in. For example, we are in lockdown. We don't know how long more it's going to be. Maybe some of your industries have been disrupted. Maybe they aren't moving fast enough. Maybe sales aren't happening fast enough. Maybe your energy isn't being matched by the energy of the market right now. And if you're out of kilter with reality, that can really, really drain. It can really drain your resilience. So after that day with Mark, I remember coming home and thinking, what's the hardest part about relationship loss? The hardest part about grief, the hardest part about losing a business, it's accepting that it's happened. And that often takes a period of time. Now, obviously, they're really, really big things, but on a small basis as well, that when you actually match your reality to your perspective, that is what can really matter. And the second story I have to tell you about this is even closer to home. And that is that during the recession in Ireland, my dad was unemployed for a number of months. And I remember the first 3 months, it started off where he was looking at jobs, and, he was all energy, and, he delivers goods for builders providers. But anyway, looking for jobs, all was good. But then the second 3 months, he started being asked questions in interviews like, well, why haven't you got a job already? And then I'll never forget the last 3. Because the last 3 was when his self-esteem started to go. Now, Dad grew up in West Cork. His identity is wound into his job, and likewise. And this just didn't fit with him. And I distinctly remember, he was still under 60 at the time now. He was still fine and young. But I distinctly remember that one day he answered the phone to take a job interview, and he started off with this line. Now, I'm nearly 60, so does that automatically mean that I'm no good for this? And I just remember thinking, Dad, that's not exactly putting your best foot forward. So, being the kind daughter that I am, I said it. And his reaction was, well, it's all right for you. You've youth on your side. You're building your business. You're up in Dublin. You're fine. It's not so easy for me. And I thought, you know what? He's right. It's not so easy for him. So later on that day, I don't know how many of you will get this, but we're a big Fair City house in Ireland. Fair City is a soap that has run for years and years and years in Ireland. And it's like a ritual that goes on in when I'm at home with Mum and Dad. So anyway, this particular night Fair City was on. So I asked Dad a couple of questions, just asked him for a couple of compliments that he received, or, different things like that. Anyway, while I was doing that, what he didn't know was that I was basically putting together all of the evidence, and I went off down into the sitting room, and I came back up and I handed him a sheet of paper, and I gave it to him anyway, and he said, what's this? I said, it's called a CV, Dad. Right, he said. what's a CV? And I said, well, it's the new way you get a job. Okay. And anyway, then he read it and he said, right, but who's it about? He actually didn't recognize himself in there. And I said, for a start, Dad, I said, it's you. And I said, secondly, tell me what's in it that you don't agree with. I said, tell me, so are you telling me that you're not punctual, that you're not hugely reliable, that you're conscientious? He said, I don't even know how to spell that. I said, it's not the point. You are it. Take it, own it, go for it. But the point was, and I just, again, it cut through me what he said to me at the end of this. He said, Suze, if I'm that good, why am I idle? And I said, Dad, you're not idle. You're unemployed. There's a difference. There's a difference. And I said, what's wrong here is that you're portraying a vision of yourself that is nowhere near the truth. I said, the reality that you're putting forward is so out of kilter with the perspective that people who work with you truly have. So anyway, with the CV, my brother Connor found a recruitment company online, and we between the two of us anyway, we submitted the CV and he got a job. He couldn't believe you could get jobs on the internet now. God, must be a great place. And we got him back to work anyway, and Mum has her sanity back and we are all living happily ever after. But the point I'm making here is what was wrong was Dad's reality. It was Dad's sense of reality in comparison to his perspective. So what I would say is, are you putting your best foot forward when you're putting yourself forward and particularly when you're asking people to back you when it comes to a new project or a salary increase or whatever it might be? Are you matching the reality of your situation with the perspective that people have of you? And if you're wondering about that, if you don't know, talk to somebody who loves you dearly and ask them how they would describe you. People call this personal branding. In my case, I was simply being a loving daughter trying to help her dad out. But there's a lesson in it for us. So that's the first point of P for perspective. The second one is empathy, is that it's so much easier to manage people when you have empathy for their situation. But what's not so easy is to make sure other people have empathy for yours. So I just want to tell you a story now about two guys that I was managing and how this was going wrong and how I had to figure out how to make it go right. I'm going to give you a couple of book references today and one later on, but I'm going to quote from it now, is The Art of Asking the Right Questions. It's by Caroline McHenry. She's founded the HR Suite. It's a company in Tralee, County Kerry. Close to Killarney, Maura. I can see Maura smiling there involuntarily with the Kerry mention. But so anyway, she wrote a book called The Art of Asking the Right Questions, and I was dealing with the situation with two of my staff, and one was based in Belgium and the other in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is well known for the direct approach, but the Belgians are a bit more cautious. So anyway, Tom is the guy in Belgium, Dow is the guy in the Netherlands, and Tom constantly was giving out about Dow. Oh my good God, I was constantly listening to how Dow was doing everything wrong. He was wrong about this, he was wrong about that, he was wrong, he was unreliable, he was everything. Now, this didn't quite match my experience of Dow, but I thought, okay, well, look, I'm his manager, maybe I'm getting a different version. So anyway, then I was constantly listening to this from Tom for a couple of weeks until eventually I said, look, Tom, look, we need to sort this out. I said, I'm not sure what you're seeing. And at this stage, it doesn't quite match what I'm seeing. So I would like to know at this point, I learned this question from Caroline's book, a very simple one. What would you do if you were me? And his instant response was, well, you should know, you're the manager. And a bit saucy now, as my brother would say. That was a bit saucy, but anyway, I had a bigger battle to fight. So I said, right, I'm going to let that one pass now, but not for long. So anyway, then I said, I understand that. However, I said, Tom, I value your opinion on things. You're working with them. I know you care for our customers. So therefore, no, really, you may not be able to come back to me right away. That's fine. I'm not asking for an instant response, but I am asking for a response. What would you do if you were me? So anyway, then of course, he found out exactly what he would do. He said, well, I would go to our top 3 customers and ask them what they think of him. All right, I said, okay, I'll do it. So I was at a workshop in Amsterdam, and Dawood just wasn't happened to be there that day. Tom was, and I spoke to a couple of customers, just dropped it in there. I said, Dawood was relatively recent recruit. What do you think? And, I didn't ask people to fill out a survey or anything. And Suzanne, I would have needed you for that. But in essence, what I was doing there was that I was saying, what do you think of how he is? And basically what I heard was neutral to good. In other words, yeah, he's fine, or yeah, he's great. So anyway, I went back to Tom and I said, Tom, okay, I did what you said. I'm coming back, and it's actually mirroring my experience of him, what's going on. And then of course, it all came out. He was threatened by him. And he was basically trying to paint, unwittingly, trying to paint a picture to me of how bad this guy was to get rid of him. So basically what I did though, you'll see there what I did was that I asked Tom to have empathy for me. by asking a question, what would you do if you were me? You're actually making sure someone stands in your shoes. Now, when I could stand in Tom's shoes, when he let me, by actually realizing what was really wrong, then I dealt with it. And I said, Tom, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Your job is fine. Daw's job is fine. He's there to support you and other parts of the business as well. And when I explained all of that, when I got clarity and everything else like that, then we got somewhere. But up until that point, I was just hitting my head off a brick wall. And what's more is that I was getting sick of dealing with the pair of them at this stage. So when we can have empathy for how the other person feels, then that is a true turbo boosting element of your resilience. So what I would say here is, if you are thinking about going for a promotion, and by the way, I would also say for anybody in business, I would also say going for a promotion in business is the equivalent of upselling or bringing a new product to the market. What I would say is stand in your customer's shoes. And I know this is a well-worn track. I know a lot of you know this already, but just think through what you can do for your manager or whoever you might be, whoever has influence around your promotion. How could you act like you've got it already? And I'll tell you how I've had to do this myself very, very recently. We're bringing out a new product offering, and I need to teach the market to want it, right? So it's innovative. It hasn't been done before. So therefore, like, nobody woke up in the year 1986 and said, we really need Facebook. Facebook taught us to need them. So I have to do the same. I'm not quite, Susan Zuckerberg here or anything, but at the same time, I have to teach the market to want what it is that we're seeking to sell. So the way in which I've been doing that is anytime that I get an opportunity to do a different job, is that I add a couple of pieces onto it. So I basically over-deliver for our existing customers to teach them to want what the additional parts of what we're offering. Now, I know that sounds a little bit vague, but hopefully you can all understand that in your own context. So if it was that I was looking for a managerial position, I would start acting like the manager or director position or whatever it might be. I would start acting like that person and doing additional tasks and just taking on the role as though how you basically want it to be. Because then when it does come, when that interview does come or when that opportunity does come, then you'll have a book of a portfolio to point out how you're already showing competence for the task. And again, that is all about empathy. So selling, whether it's selling an idea, whether it's selling a salary, whether it's selling for a promotion or whatever it is you might be, having empathy is a huge bonus, but particularly it's really good for resilience as well. And then the third point that I'm going to refer to here in perspective is meaning. And no matter what, I think, I'm not a mother myself, but I have a very good one. And I think myself that the toughest job in the world has to be probably, I would imagine, to be a parent. And the economics of it doesn't make any sense, really. The return on investment from an economic point of view, it's not really there. The amount of time and energy and care that you put into a young person, how would you actually get that back? Well, if you think about it, when does the return on parenting happen? Well, really, it's not about when it happens or how much it happens or why people do it. It's because of the meaning behind it. It just shows you it is the most selfless task in the world. And yet people do it every single day and without question. And that is because they see meaning in it. They see meaning in why you would bring a child into the world or bring up a family or whatever else. Now, I have to tell you, I'm unlikely to be a mother myself at any stage in the future. But the point is that I am in huge, huge admiration for people who do that job, if you want to call it that. But I think they teach us a huge amount from the point of view of meaning. So when it comes to lockdown, we can all think about lockdown as, oh my God, this is just the most awful period of time when we're literally locked down, when we can't do everything. That will drain your resilience. That mindset will drain your resilience for sure. But the thing is that what if you were to look back on the book of your life and one chapter of it was lockdown in New York, what will you say about what that period was? So will it be that it was just something to have, suffered through and gotten over? Or will you say, well, that was the time that I really made a big difference in my application for whatever? Will you say that it's the time when I really reconnected with people that I hadn't time before? Will you say it's when you reconnected with yourself? The thing is that the single biggest thing that any of us can do anytime to get through a hard time is to realize the meaning of the situation. And that is how, in tough times, that's how I've gotten through them, is to think, well, what is the lesson that I'm learning here? What is the lesson that I can use in my own life? What is this tough time teaching me? So that then at least I can extract meaning out of it, which makes it then more meaningful. So that is the first letter of prefer. All of the others are shorter. But what I think that it's all about this particular area. Here is the most effective, the most powerful, the things that you can do. These aren't the quickest things you can do. I'll get on to much quicker later on, but these things are truly, truly, truly powerful, and they will make a huge difference. But before we do go on to the next letter, I have a question for you. And that is a question that I'm going to ask you through the chat. I'm just going to stop sharing here for a moment, and I'm just going to put a question in here. Okay, and there you, oh, let me go there again, paste. And I'm going to change that. Right, that's to everyone there in the meeting now. To share, copy the link. And now, okay. So can I now ask everyone to click on the link, and in there you will be asked a question. That question is, what builds your resilience? And you can give me, okay, so I can see a couple of you have already started sending in answers. And so if you just type in what builds your resilience, and then after that then, just come back into Zoom. Okay, so let me share my screen again, and let's see. Okay, so now you can just see, if you come back into Zoom now, you can actually see how all the answers are coming together. 6 of you have answered so far. So far we have challenges, positivity, consistency, self-development, having a goal, short-term goals, community, ambition, dedication, sleep, routine. Now, what you'll see starting to happen is, as things are repeated, the font will get bigger. So it's very clear to me what this group values. Very, 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 very clear to me. And it'll be very clear to you all as soon as you come back. So far, you're great. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. So far, 17 of you have answered, 18 of you now. Clearly, this is a very family-focused group. Look at Zoom. Look at the center of that screen. Right now, you can see that family is the single biggest thing that builds your resilience. That's why I was telling you the story about me and Dad. That's why I was telling you the story about parents, is that ultimately they can be great sources. Positivity, ambition, consistency, challenges, belief in myself, routine, etc. So I'm going to take a screenshot of that, and I'm going to send it to you all afterwards with some other links. But before we do that, let's now go to the next question, and that is the opposite. So what drains your resilience? So let's just get that off your respective chests. What is it that drains your resilience? So if you go back onto the link, and if you've forgotten the link, by the way, it's in the chat box, and just type in then, what drains your resilience? Now, what I'm not going to mention anything yet. Okay, so, okay, I can see here, right, it's again, I have to say you're a pretty consistent group. I am a pretty consistent group, that is for sure. So far we've had nine different answers that have come in so far. So if you actually look, as the other ones are coming in, a couple of trends I'm spotting here. Obviously negativity is jumping out a mile here. So the word negative has come up a few times, but look at the other things are lack. Lack is so far, lack of work, lack of trust, lack of encouragement, lack of transparency. So monotony, uncertainty, the unknown, sexism, bad work environment, overscheduling, overwork. Okay. I'll tell you a couple of things that I noticed as you were doing that. Number one, it took you longer to come up with what drains your resilience than what builds it. That's a really positive sign. The reason for that is that it's obviously easier for you to be more resilient than not. And that's a really, really good sign. I don't always see that. The second thing is, generally I get fewer responses to the second question, which you've demonstrated to me as well. And the third thing that I can see here is that you're putting lack of and negativity in there. But if you switch those around, if you put lack of, let's say, that usually where you're thinking something positive and yet you're not getting enough of it. which is a very, often people can put in negative words, just completely negative words, where you're putting in lack of positive words. So I have to say, I'm super impressed, super impressed. There's a good bit of psychology goes into those two questions. Again, I'll take a screenshot and I'm going to share that with you afterwards. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the second letter of prefer, and that's R, and R is for resourcefulness. So I have a model here called, or one that I use called GROW. G is for goal. So let's talk about how to increase your salary by the end of the year. Okay, let's talk about that now. So a good goal is one that where, first of all, there's a time on it, because otherwise it's just a dream. Nothing wrong with dreams, but they need time frames. And the second thing is that you need to know if you had achieved it. So I'm going to give you an example of a goal where you would know if you achieved it. And that is, I would like to stop worrying about money. Now, a lot of people do worry a lot about money, but I bet you they don't worry about it 24 hours a day. So therefore, in that context, if you just cook the dinner, for example, and garlic bread comes out of your oven and you're savoring the beautiful smell and you're not worrying about money, have you achieved your goal? Probably not. That's the point I'm making, is that you have to know if you have achieved it. And the test I always think about myself is, think about what a goal is in sport. It's when you actually crosses a line, so that somebody can evaluate then if it has been crossed or not. That's what a true goal would be. But let's talk about what's stopping you from preventing, or what are the realities around that goal. So one might be you're afraid to ask to increase your salary. 2 might be you don't know where to start. 3 might be you're worried about the consequences. I might say the consequences of having a higher salary. Yep. And when I talk about it, you know what I mean. And number 4 is what if people think ... So it's always important to get the realities of the situation out, get them out and get them on paper. When you do this, by the way, you'll find that they will repeat. So it might be, I'm afraid to ask, or my boss is intimidating. You might have the 2. They're not 2, they're the same one. So whatever it might be, when you write down your realities, I'm telling you, I'm guessing anyway, they will repeat. And that's what fears do when we don't get them out of our heads, is they kind of multiply, even though they're just all the one. So G for goal, or for reality. Now split them. This is the 7 habits of highly effective people. This is where I'm coming from with Stephen Covey's insights here. Now split them into what you've control over and what you don't have control over. Afraid to ask, you have control over that. You don't know where to start, that's just knowledge. We'll sort that. You're worried about the consequences. Consequences to whom? To you? You've control over that. But what if people think? You don't have control over that. And there is no point in wasting time or energy on things that you can't control. There is plenty of variables in your equation that you can turn into constants. You can do that for sure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to how we can overcome these, right? So let's now just put practical strategies in place in order to deal with each of these. So G is for goal, R is for realities, now O is for opportunities. Let's look at what we can do. So first of all, when it comes to I'm afraid to ask, what I would say is whatever you might be wanting to do, whether you are asking for funding, you're asking for your own salary, or you're negotiating your salary, you're asking for a sale, do your research beforehand. So for example, I just did this quickly on Glassdoor. So I just looked at how much would I get as a marketing manager in New York City. And at the moment it says that is $65,000 per year. And that's 1% above the national average. Now, if I was going into a negotiation with an employer where either I'm going for promotion or I'm going for a new job and I'm going to be a marketing manager, the way in which I would put this forward is, so Susan, what are your salary expectations? Well, my salary expectations would be in the region of $70,000 per year. And the reason for that is, according to the research that I did, so first of all, I'm now bringing a third party in, and a substantiated one, and saying to them, so based on my research, the average rate of pay for this role is this price. However, in my own case, and now I would insert my USP, because of my master's, because of my experience internationally, because of my specialism in social media, because of the fact that I have worked in 4 different industries, I believe that a higher salary than that is merited, because ultimately the work you're going to get is above average. So you see where I'm going with this is, when I'm afraid to do it, you don't just need to do it yourself. Lean on Glassdoor, lean on whoever. And particularly, I would go to the recruitment company salary guides. They can be extremely good and very detailed. And they can also document like how much experience and in what sectors and so on like that can be useful. So that's what I would say. And when it comes to setting a price, I have to do that all the time. Every client that I go to will always say, what's your price? And of course, then they'll ask why. And I just need to document it as well with our experience, with the work that we need to put into it, with the outcomes that it's going to have. So do your research and substantiate it, lean on a third party. Now, second thing is, if that doesn't work, okay, then consider non-monetary benefits. So what can you get in your workplace that may not bring you money, but can give you the platform to doing so? So I took a look at this, for example. If you can do an MBA, it is the average pay for alumni is $142,000, and that's up 12% since 2014. Now, that's not an exact science, and obviously it depends on who answered the survey and everything else. But if your employer can meet your salary expectations, but meets other ones, can you lever it in other ways? So, for example, will they fund some part of your education? Or could you take on some, if you bring in additional business to the firm or create some sort of efficiency, can you then generate X% of that for you? So can you find another way to generate benefits for you, either of a monetary sort indirectly, like I say, through generating commission, etc., or alternatively, generating benefits for you that can be a way that you can build your own earning potential in the future. Another one. Let's talk about the consequences of earning more money. As Maura mentioned to you, I wrote The Savvy Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom. And I'll tell you one problem that I often see over and over and over again is the fear of success. And I'll tell you why. Because the fear of success often equals, or success in general, often equals change. And despite the fact that we say that we want something, when it comes closer to us, we might realize that the consequences of getting that are a little bit too scary. And the reason I know this is because I suffer it all the time. And I'll just tell you a quick story about when I realized it for the first time. So I set up the business in 2010. And from the very, 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 very beginning, I wanted to take the company international. Now, when I started, I was simply a woman delivering financial training on my own. So anyway, I won't go through the story of how we started, but I started doing business in Malta, and beautiful country, south of Italy. But I remember the first time I went over there, I had about 20 meetings and off I went anyway, bag on my back. And then I went and I sat down and I went through the first one and the second one. And by the end of the first day, I could see there was potential to do business there. And that night, I remember my boyfriend at the time, husband now, not that you needed that context, but just to tell you. So anyway, Ardal was on Skype that night with me. And when he called me, I was in floods of tears. And he said, in the name of God, what's wrong with you? Now he added in a few more adjectives, but we leave those out as well. So he said, what is wrong with you at all? And he said, is there someone dead? And I said, no, there's not. He said, did you get attacked today? And I said, no. And he said, what's wrong? So then I said, well, it's just that based on a couple of meetings today, I think that there is actually, I'm smiling now as I'm telling you this, but he said, I do think there's actually genuine potential to do business out here. And he says, and are you going to get to the problem? And I said, yeah, but then what if I have to come out here, and I have to come out here every couple of weeks, and then I might have to come out here for a couple of months at a time, and then you'll break up with me, and then I won't ever see you again, and then I can't go home to my family again, and then I probably never, oh my God. And he said, well, okay, whoa. Did you get an order today? And I said, not quite. And he said, okay, 1 minute now. He said, how about this? If you get some business over here, first of all, he says, I think that's a good thing. I thought that's what you went over for. But he said, I'll come over with you because, of course, whoever you'd be delivering training for, they'd have to put you in a nice hotel. I'll go out. I'll golf all day. You can do the work. You bring in the money. And I think that'd be pretty okay. And I said, hold on now. I never signed up for that either. But I'm so glad that I voiced what was wrong, because I can tell you exactly what would have happened if I bottled that up. I would have come home. I wouldn't have followed up, or I would have followed up, barely. And I would have just self-sabotaged, and I would have said, Malta, lovely country, go on holiday, but as regards business, nothing to see here, move along. But all you need to do in order to overcome the fear of success is to ask yourself the same question that you need to overcome the fear of failure. And that is, what's the best that could happen? And in our case, we did talk about that. What was the best that could happen? The best didn't happen, by the way. A little mediocre version of it happened at the beginning, but over time, we continue to build on that. But we are about 65% export now. And if I didn't have that conversation, the business would have really, really suffered, and me along with it. So what I would say is, when it comes to the consequences of success, make sure and articulate them with the people that matter and be happy with them. And then after that, just reach for the stars. The final thing I'm going to talk about here is anxiety around money. And when it comes to, of course, salaries are only brought in with a view to funding what they can subsequently be spent on. So if you are financially anxious, and that's most people, by the way, is what I would say is the best thing to do, I do it for the company, is to have a full cash flow statement for the full year ahead. So as you can see here, what that means is that you take bits and pieces of your financial life from all over the place and simply put a structure on them. And that structure is that you start off with the bank, that you write down your bank balance, and that you write when will money come in, when will money go out, and then see if at any stage you get into a red zone. Now, the red zone doesn't mean you go into the negative. It could be just at a period of time when you think, okay, then that things could be really tight. And then you can say, right, maybe we should move that expenditure to later, or I wonder, could I get that money in earlier? What could I do about it? But writing a cash flow statement, either for your household or for yourself or for your company or for your project, is truly, truly helpful when it comes to managing financial anxiety. So before I move on to E, the third letter, I'm going to open this up for some questions. So I don't know if any questions have come in yet, but just to let you know, I'm going to be opening it up right after the slide. And I did promise to tell you the one thing that has made me immune to rejection. If you run a business for 10 years, you have to suck up an awful lot of rejection, whether it's for funding or for grants or from customers or from people who you can't meet their salary expectations. You have to really deal with some serious amount of rejection. And I've learned how to deal with that through this spreadsheet. So what I do is that I write down all of my opportunities, and you can see there the detail that I have on it. So I have the organization, the contact, the location. That's what matters in my case when you're speaking or training. The price, the content, and an update. And so you can see I have all of these things here. And then what I do is that as we move through them, whatever gets accepted, I move into the accepted side, and what gets unaccepted goes into the unaccepted side. And then I write down why it was unaccepted. And then after that, I write down, would I have changed anything? Because sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes, you know, there's potential opportunities come to us that aren't the right fit. So there's no point in beating myself up over not getting those. In fact, like Garrett Brooks says, they're probably unanswered prayers in a way. So, but by doing this kind of a mathematical approach, I know that, let's say I'm converting 1 and 2 opportunities. I know that for everyone I don't convert, then it just now means that I'm 100% closer to getting to the next one that I will get. And by documenting why you don't get them, it takes the emotion out of it and it puts the learning in. So for every time that we haven't got accepted for a grant or a funding application or anything, I always go back and ask why. Often asking why has distinguished me from the others, which leads me to a better chance the next time around anyway. But separately to all of that, it enables me to really focus on the fact that sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but not letting the don'ts sucking out the resilience from you in order to go forward again. So that's the one change that I made in my mindset that made me immune to rejection. Rejection is simply really good market research that is learning. It's not even in disguise, it's just learning. And when I do that, I'm not afraid of being rejected then. I'm not at all. If it's rejected, well then I'll simply learn more. It'll go into that side of the spreadsheet and it'll bring me closer to an acceptance. That's it. That's all that's to it. So at this point, Maura and Jennifer, is there any questions that have come in, or would you like me to continue to the next letter?
I think I did not tell people to put questions in the chat box in the beginning, so we don't have any. But if people would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat box and we will check it out. But if anybody wants to put their hand up now that has a question right now, we'll take it. See if we have that feature, putting your hand up. I don't think we do. If you have a question, please put it in the chat box and we can take it.
It looks like Maureen had a question there. If you want to unmute yourself, Maureen, and ask it. Or just
Jennifer, thank you so much, Susan. One question that I do have is, what advice do you have for employees who are navigating an environment or a culture at their work, at their firm, where performance and success and promotions are not necessarily based on your individual accomplishments or successes, but rather it's almost like they're measuring people on a curve. So it's like you just have to stand out amongst your peers and prove what you've done better than everyone else in order to get the promotion.
Okay.
Like exceeding expectations is the expectation. And then once you exceed expectations, it's like, how did you exceed expectations more than everyone else to warrant a promotion?
Okay, great question, and not at all surprised by it. Again, given the group who are here and given your collective characteristics, I'm not at all surprised to hear a question like that. Okay, so first of all, I would say the same, independent of if the expectation was, as you say, to be above or otherwise. I think everybody should always make sure and document your successes and tell people about them in a not braggy way, but in an informational way or in a different way. So just to give you maybe just 3 concrete examples of how I do it. Number 1 is that I go back and thank people who have helped me along the way. And when I thank them, I tell them about a result that we've achieved as a result of their help. So let's say an agency that has given us an opportunity to get some funding or whatever, I'll often go back and I'll tell the people involved, I'll say, look, we did achieve this, but I'm really appreciative of your help along the way. I'm not doing it just to, get something else. I'm genuinely appreciative as well. But that's one way of kind of giving an information or informationally passing on that you've achieved something in such a way that doesn't come across in a braggy way. The second thing that I would say as well is that whenever I get a compliment from somebody on email, I'll ask them, would they mind sharing that on LinkedIn? And I don't do it all the time, but I've often thought some people can often really go to the trouble of saying, oh, thanks, Susan, that was very insert whatever. And I get that, and that's lovely, but they wouldn't necessarily think of putting it on a LinkedIn testimonial, and why would they? So instead I take it and I turn a private message into something more public. So, well, maybe I haven't time to get into 3, but there are 2 examples of ways in which I think it's really important that everybody documents their successes. In terms of standing out among your peers, that's a tricky one because there's a bit of co-opetition there. It sounds like you might have to work together and at the same time stand out as well. And I think the way, the culture of doing that, it sounds like that you need to make sure and have the right influence by making sure that you're visible and that your personal brand is visible in the ways that I say, but also it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that it also needs to have a kind of a team element involved as well. That's certainly the case in one of my own, one of my own clients. Yeah,
be a team, but make sure that you beat everybody on your team somehow.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a similar situation with one of our clients that is in the US as well, where we kind of all help each other out, but yet we're all in competition with each other as well. Now, I don't know the in-depth element of where you're coming from here, but in my experience, it is better to play the long game and to maybe celebrate their successes when they happen and congratulate them when they happen, and to create a sense of goodwill around that. And then I find when that happens, that when it comes to your turn, when it comes to a time that you really shine, is that goodwill is then built up around you as well. So what I would say is the last thing I'd mention there is acknowledge that it's hard, and that's okay. It's okay that it's hard. And I would imagine that based on what you're telling me, that this isn't for everybody. In fact, it's probably for very few. So just appreciate the fact that you're willing to walk that respective walk, and just, make sure that you're getting the meaning out of it. Like I said in the last letter, that this is a role that's rewarding, and it's something that's building you personally, and that is at the end of the day what it's all about. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you so much, especially that last part about meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's the long game for sure.
Yeah, the long game is what matters. Like the organization where I'm working with, and I'm literally dealing with a situation an hour before I came on the call, where I really know what you're talking about, and where I delicately now have to call somebody out while still being a team player, and it's a tricky balance. But the long game matters. It really does. Thank you very much for your question, and I'll take as many as you guys want afterwards for sure. Okay, so the next 4 letters are much shorter, and what I'll just finish up on R, which is all that matters in the R letter around resourcefulness is what are you going to do about it. So for example, of all I've spoken about, you might put an hour in your diary to go through some research tonight about Glassdoor or any other the recruitment company salary guides. Document your portfolio of achievements over the weekend. Again, goals need to have deadlines, and talk about your financial dreams, maybe with somebody that's important to you. Okay, so the next letter is E for exercise. Now, 3 weeks before my wedding, I waltzed into the gym and I said to the person behind there, I said, can you make me look about 2 sizes smaller? I have a wedding dress to fit into in 3 weeks' time. And he said, no. And I said, okay, well, can you make a start on it anyway or something? Did you ever feel fitter just because you have a gym fob on your keyring? Exactly. That was how I was feeling as well. Yeah, I was hoping you'd react to that. This is the point, is that all of this, right, I just thought of optics. The thing was that I noticed in terms of exercise is that when I was trying not to make a show of myself on the spinning bike and not let my lungs collapse and me fall off the bike, I couldn't be worrying about things. I couldn't be worrying about what was going on with Tom or Dowa, or I couldn't be worrying about what was going on with different things that I didn't know about, or something I'd been rejected for, or anything else like that. What I found about exercise is that actually, while exercise is great for your body, it enabled me to clear my mind. And that's a big part of why I do it. It will make you more resilient, just to get out of your normal environment, or even to be in your normal environment and to be doing something totally different. The 4 places that you will get your biggest or best ideas are exercising, in the shower, just before you wake up or just before you go to sleep, and on holidays. None of those are sitting in the office, or in fact any place that you normally operate, because you can't be strategic and operate in the same place. Your mind is a powerful thing, and it just matches the environment that you're in to the task that you generally assign to it. That's why it's not good to bring the laptop into bed, because then your brain is confused between whether you should be working or sleeping in it. So that is what I believe. I believe exercise is great for resilience, and I still don't look like her, by the way. I know you can only see this bit of me now, but it still don't look like her, but it's okay. As I say, the point is that I use exercise to build my resilience, and often when I'm just completely overwhelmed or I'm overworked or I can't think anymore or anything else, I simply go out for a walk. I broke my foot in December 2018, and I was on crutches or a boot for almost a year. It was a complicated break, and that put a stop to the gym, all right, but I still needed to find a way in order to exercise parts of my body. So I'm a big believer in it, I have to say. I do think it truly makes a big difference, and it's free and it's simple. The gym bit isn't, but obviously, well, they don't work now anyway at the moment, but in essence, exercise is a really good way. The next letter is F for focus. And if you were in front of me now, which I know digitally you are, but if you were in front of me now in person, I would ask you to write down the numbers from 1 to 26 in a line. Some of you are already going to do it anyway. So I'm just going to tell you probably what would happen. So if you were to write down 1 to 26, it probably would take you about 19 seconds. I have done this with lots and lots and lots of people. Now, if on another line, I then asked you to write A to Z, full alphabet. Just write the letters A to Z. And then I would ask you, okay, so how long did that take? It takes less, actually. You'd probably do that in about 15 seconds. So altogether, it'll be under 40 seconds to do the 2. However, if I then asked you, okay, now what I'd like you to do is write 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, the whole way up to the end. Here's what would happen. It will take you longer than a minute. You will swear, you will make mistakes, and it's likely that you really don't enjoy it. And you see, that's the problem with multitasking. Multitasking drains our resilience. Focus is what builds it. And when the night I wrote the paper, I wrote a full paper. Sorry, I drafted the presentation one night, and I wrote a full paper on resilience in between my 2 elements of research on this topic a long time ago when I started looking into this. And I had cleared the table of everything. And I mean everything except sticky notes for my thoughts, a pen, the laptop, and a coffee. Everything else was gone. The microphone that I have here in front of you today, that was gone. Any single thing that the phone was definitely gone. That was upstairs with Ardal, and I was only allowed to look at it as a treat break every 25 minutes. I simply cleared my entire environment of only what I was working on. Another book recommendation here coming, and that is Deep Work by Cal Newport. That's where I learned all the techniques about doing really good work in short periods of time. Again, all of these book recommendations I'll put in my email to you afterwards. But I guarantee you is that if you focus on one thing at a time, it dramatically helps your resilience. And another killer of it is procrastination. So here's what procrastination looks like. So, right, we know what we want. We know our goal. We've got a timeline. We've got a deadline. We've got an action plan. Got it. However, there's emails and there's voicemails. Oh, this is urgent call and there's random stuff. And oh, now it's Thursday and it's lunchtime on Thursday. So it's probably not worth starting. And look, I'll just do this one thing. And what all of those things are are your procrastinators. That is what takes the joy out of doing a task, is because as you keep putting it off, then you start feeling guilty that you didn't do it in the first place. So I'll tell you how to find your procrastinators. Now, you can deal with them. When you know what they are, you can deal with them, but I'll tell you how to find them. Find them really simply. Write down 6 tasks that you want to do. Don't do anything else until just those 6 are done. See what happens. I don't know why 6. I don't know why 6. I don't know the science behind it. But what will happen is, as you try to just do those 6, something else will come up. Then you'll have to make a decision whether you do it or not. And if you do it, it's either a procrastinator or it's something urgent, but you'll decide. No one knows, you'll decide. But when I've done this, and I've done this a few times, by God, getting to the bottom of that list is something shocking. It really is. It is because you then are come face to face with your procrastinators. And maybe it's social media. And I love social media. Maura loves social media. We all love social media. But it's just, when do we use it just to get out of doing something more difficult? So procrastination drains your resilience. And I've told you how to find out what your procrastinators are. It will be up to you then to figure out from there. So that's the 4th letter, which is F for focus. And the next one is emotional leverage points. So emotional leverage points is, how do you build your inspiration at will? How do you build it? That's how do you lever your emotions up when you need to? So in doing that, I think it's important to don't count the things that you do, but do the things that count. So I have 3 daily habits that I wanted to share with you all that I find are very, very helpful. Number 1 is that I start the day off every single day by doing the most important thing. I know people say eat the frog and all that sort of stuff, but my opinion is get the day off to a good start. Like today I had a call for 2 hours with Tom, my guy in Belgium, and we have a new guy now, another guy in Belgium as well. I sat down for 2 hours and I had the difficult conversations that I can't, to be honest, wasn't looking forward to. Got through a load of stuff, uncovered things that were going on that I didn't know about, all that sort of thing. And that set me off. That even if I was to stop working by 10 a.m. this morning, I was off to a really good start. So that's one of the things that I do. It's one of my daily habits. Number 2 is, and I do this every single day, like every single day. Oh, by the way, it only takes 21 days to form a habit. That's all. After that, it's second nature. So these are so second nature, I have to remind myself that I do them. But the second thing I do every single day, every day, is I build a relationship. Every day. And sometimes they're business relationships, and sometimes it is a family relationship, but every day I invest time in a relationship. I've started walking with my dad. Now, my dad has had 2 legs all his life, but he's only started walking since I've been here with him during lockdown. And we have great sorts of chats. I found out actually that the place where he met my mum, he had been there years before selling a pig. Who'd have thought, huh? Who'd have thought? And you might say, well, what difference does that make into your world? Just something I didn't know about my dad. And I've learned lots about him now over the last couple of years, or over the last couple of weeks. I'm in Cork at the moment with Mum and Dad during lockdown, and it's lovely. I never really had that time with them. So I could, of course, do another hour of email or another hour of something else, and instead I choose the time to spend walking around the ring with my dad. So that's an example when I say about building a relationship. But I want to ask you all a question. And I do want to ask you all a question because, and you won't be able to answer me very quickly, but I was asked this question at 25. And the question was, what will you regret when you're 80? What will you regret? So the question isn't what would you? It's what actions are you taking today that you will regret when you're 80? It's not an easy question to answer. It took me 4 hours anyway. And my answer was, if I didn't get to know the past, current and future generations of my family. And back then, when I was 25, I made a decision then that every month, without fail, I would get down to Cork to see Mum, Dad, and my brother Connor was living here at the time. He lives in Dublin now, but I said every month I do it, and I have every single month because they're important. And if I didn't get down often enough, well, then I would regret it, and I didn't want to be regretting it at the wrong time. So every single day I build a relationship. And the third thing is that I do what I reflect on the meaning of every day. I just write down an achievement in red pen at the top of my diary. Every day, at the end of the day, I write down something that I've achieved. It's a mini form of journaling, I suppose, but every day, because every day has its merits. Every single day of your life is leading towards something. And maybe some days it is that I had jet lag. I won't be having that again for another bit, but that I had jet lag and I continued. Maybe it was that I went walking with my dad and I heard a story that I didn't know before, or like he told me the other day about the first time that he got his car and what my granddad said to him. And, you know, that was an achievement because I just took that time to listen, and not everybody has that opportunity. Some days it is that I signed a client, and some days it is that I duplicated myself to get beat in Ireland and New York at the same time. But the point is that every day has its merits. So they're the three things that I do to build my emotional leverage points. I also promise to tell you 3 questions that will uncover hidden information when you're dealing with people. And this was the book I mentioned to you earlier by Caroline McHenry. It's called The Art of Asking the Right Questions. And one of those questions is, do you have your diary with you? If you're ever trying to get someone's time, ever, it's so easy to say, you know, we should have a coffee sometime, you know, we kind of non-committal, we don't really know if we are or not. That's what'll cement it. Do you have your diary with you? Now, how many of you have your diary with you today? Exactly, all of you, because it's in your hand. It's a question they can't say no to. Do you have your, so if it is, oh yeah, we should talk about that promotion, or we should talk about that idea that you had, or whatever, say, okay, yeah, but do you have your diary with you now? And that will make sure that you get that meeting. I have used that thousands of times, and nobody ever has said no to me. So it's a real, because nobody ever says no, they don't, because they always do. Another question is this, the one I referred to earlier. That's the one as, what would you do if you were me? That's a powerful one when you need empathy, or particularly in terms of managing people. And again, to go back to that question about, you know, that team culture, and also, you know, when the expectation is to exceed expectations, and then when you exceed expectations and you have to keep doing that all the time, it's helpful then to talk to somebody who's also worked in that scenario and say, well, what would you do if you were me? And the last one has been the best one for me in terms of moving forward on implementation, and that is, what do we need to do to move forward? And that clears the way then. So in order for me to get a promotion, it's always a team effort. So I always ask that when I'm at the point where I need to figure out that is my way, by the way of CULLETON, or running a Savvy Teams program or whatever. And then it's, okay, so what do we need to do to move forward? Now, what this pushes the other person to do is to tell me it in a nice, soft, gentle way, or else elucidate the path for me about what I need to do in order to actually surmount the obstacles that they might have in front of them. So there, and I've lots of questions, but last January, I was in New Zealand with the Irish Business Network New Zealand, and they ever asked, or they ask, or were asked. So you can see there's a ranges in there. They'll all be available. Truly, truly important at all of our collective stages. They really are. So the last letter is R, and it's a very simple one. It is recharge. And that is, I don't know if you're thinking about your bed. And I'm just going to go back to mothers here again for a moment, and particularly my own. And that is that I think there is something in the Irish mother. I don't know what mothers in general are the most selfless human beings, I think, that have walked the earth, but they can often feel, I'd say, aggrieved that there aren't enough people, or maybe that they don't get more help than they do. And yet, you know, I've often offered to cook in my own house at home with mum and dad, and for a start they'd be afraid that they would die of whatever random ingredient that I might put into it. But my mum always says, no, you're working hard there now. No, you sit down there now and I'll do the dinner for you there. You need a rest. You're working there all the time. In the name of God, you sit down there with your father and talk to him about such and such. The thing is, though, is that do we accept the recharging opportunities that we have? Do we accept them? And what I would say is that when I talk to a group like this, I know, as I look at you all, I know that we are dealing here with people who are employees, and your managers, and your staff, and your self-employed, and your researchers, and your organizers, and your aunts, and your sisters, and your friends of people, and your colleagues, and your volunteers, and you have a million roles between you all. Now, how in the name of God are you going to be able to sustain all of that if you don't take care of you? So taking care of you isn't selfish, it's selfless. It really, really, really is. It is selfless. So R for recharging is taking care of you is the way in which you can become more resilient. So in summary, here are my 6 letters, P-R-E-F-E-R. P is for perspective, that's empathy. Managing your expectations with your reality and meaning. Resourcefulness is the GROW model, which is goals, opportunities, goals, realities, opportunities, and what are you going to do about it? E is for exercise, F is for focus, particularly spotting the 6-item technique will spot your procrastinators and removing all obstacles out of your environment when you need to focus. E is for emotional leverage points. They're my 3 daily habits, and also just about asking the questions to get the information that you need. And then finally, R is for recharge. So I'm really delighted to take any more questions now. I kissed the Blarney Stone when I was 8. My husband thinks I swallowed it. There is lots of people who would agree with him. So I am happy to answer your questions for as long as you would like. Just my website there is thepositiveeconomist.com. It's a blog with lots of resources for anybody who might be interested. And we have a newsletter that includes podcasts. And I will be interviewing someone that you all know very, very shortly, but I'll keep quiet about who that is yet. So any new content that we have always goes out in our newsletter as well. So I truly am delighted to have had the opportunity here to speak to you today. And as I say, delighted to take any questions that anybody has.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. That was excellent. That was really great information. So I think once we share the slides as well, people can go back into it and kind of go through it again, because some of these tips you can really use every week, every day. So it's a nice, very nice roadmap. So thank you so much. So now I think we're going to go for some questions. So please raise your hand, go in the chat box. Susan's willing to hang around for a few minutes. So ask now.
I love this one from Suzanne. Nothing better than my mom cooking her tomato soup for me. Although I am mom, I'm still a child. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Since I've come down here, mom thought, like, you know, I'm sure she thought that at some stage her 2 children would grow up, but I'm challenging that assumption. Delighted to.
As I say, we're under lockdown, and both my kids are here, and they are 19 and 22. So now I'm like torn in between. My husband sometimes says to me, stop babying them. But then if I do my own stuff, then he says, oh, you should act a little bit maybe more as their mom. And then they are like so used in living in the dorms and doing their own stuff. So it's like, okay, you have to find that work-life balance. So we finally figured it out because we were empty nesters in New York. Now we're like forced into like living in Florida in our house with 2 kids. And I'm like, okay, what role do I take? So my whole work-life balance is like a little bit out of balance right now. So this is so much fun because I think Irish moms and Dutch moms are the same. It's like my mom doesn't want me in the kitchen because I could screw up. I'm like, I lived in 3 different countries. So why is it that you're still like that? You're incompetent in a way, but you're not. So perfect like webinar. I really enjoyed it. So I'm tracing back because somebody else needs to ask questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. I really, really do appreciate that. And also I'm sure you'll appreciate my earlier story about managing the Belgian and Dutch personalities that I had. I think, yeah, I think you'll recognize the truth in where I'm coming from there. I really appreciate your kind words, and I'm sure your 2 adult children are delighted with you.
Okay, so I put a question in there if nobody is asking a question, and it's about handling rejection. So what's the best way to handle rejection? Because sometimes you can take it very personal and it can knock you off for a long time. It's something you can think about years later, or on a smaller level, you might get over. What are some of the things people can do to overcome rejection?
Okay, well, I have enough of experience to talk about this for sure. And well, I'll tell you about the time, one of the worst times of it actually, because it's good to tell you about a deep rejection, I suppose. And that is, I remember I was studying for this really, really tough exam, which I have since passed, but at the time I didn't. It's called the CFA, the Chartered Financial Analyst exams. So there's only 100,000 people in the world currently that have passed them. And anyway, there's 3 levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. So anyway, it came to level 3. And I remember that now it's self-study as well. So there aren't lectures and coffee and classmates. So anyway, I did the exam, and on the day came for the results to come out, and the results came out anyway, and I had failed. Now I never used that word. I never used the word failed at all. And I remember I left the office, very few days that I've done that. I left the office anyway. And I went home to Ardle, and Ardle, my husband. And I said to him, I just couldn't, like, just the thought of this just then meant that there was so much more time that I had to spend studying. And it just meant that I had to give up a whole other year of doing all sorts of things and everything else like that. So what I'm trying to say is that the rejection went, or the not passing it had a big implication in terms of time. So whatever rejections you're all thinking about right now, that's probably something that happened in your mind, is that you think, if I don't get this, then that means I can't advance, or I can't get this, or I can't. So it stops your life's plan. So anyway, anyway, I was really distraught. And next thing, I got a phone call, and it was from a charity, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called Dress for Success. And it was from a Cork number. Now, since Mum and Dad live in Cork, anytime I saw that a number from Cork, I thought, okay, there could be something wrong with them. It's the only reason I answered it. So anyway, I came on, and they said to me, we'd love if you would come down and launch the charity for us. This is for people who can't afford the clothes to go for interview. So if they can't go for interview, they can't go for the job, and therefore it completely stops them. And then I just thought, wow, I'm concerned about an exam that I didn't pass, and I'm privileged enough to be able to apply for it and go for it and possibly pass it in the future. And there's other women around the world, they can't even afford the clothes to go for whatever job interview they have. Now, I think, Susan, I think it's time that you really took a sense of reality about what's going on. So anyway, then I said, of course I would launch it. Of course I would do that. And I did. And it was fine from there. But the other thing was that Ardal said to me, he said, you do realize, he said, you're going back to that library on Saturday. And I said, no, I need a few weeks. He said, no, you won't. You will not. He said, no, you're acting like you're going to pass it. That's the end of it. That's it. And I'm not a woman who takes orders from anyone, except in this case. And so anyway, so if I was just to extrapolate that, I have one last part of that story to tell you, is that I remember ringing my mom and telling her anyway, and I said I didn't pass. And, I remember, talking to her about it, but then I rang Dad, and Dad, as I mentioned, he drives a truck. So he was in this really noisy environment. And I said, Dad, I didn't pass. And he says, what? God, that's great. Jeez, that's mighty altogether now, in this real strong West Cork accent. That's fantastic now. And I said, no, Dad, no. And he said, what? What's wrong? And I said, no, Dad. I said, I failed. And I started to cry. Now, men can't handle women crying anyway, particularly if it's the daughter. And he says, oh, geez, sorry about that, Suze. Go in and ring Mum. and I just remember I said, Dad, I failed. You see, that was the thing, was that I didn't say I failed an exam. I failed. So, Maura, to extrapolate the learnings from that, what I would say is that, number one, often breaks are there to slow you down so that you can speed up, is that life isn't in a straight line. Secondly, I had to extrapolate the learning from it. I learned a lot more from studying the exam afterwards, and now I work with the organisation. They're actually a client now. And if I hadn't had that experience, then I wouldn't have known. I simply wouldn't have known how much, how I wouldn't have had the insight. And again, to go back to another word, empathy. The third thing is to realize, to put it into perspective, that it was an exam that I could repeat and that I could do again. Other people have it so much worse. And I think the fourth thing is to keep going, though, is to put it on, in my case, that unaccepted side of the spreadsheet, to put it down there, to notch it down, and to realize that, rejection and not achieving things sometimes is part of the course. There isn't a golfer in the world, or a tennis player in the world, or a CEO in the world that hasn't that side of their spreadsheet pretty full. So really, that's what successful people do. So, and extracting the emotion, you've got a lot of control over that. But saying things, then I started saying, no, I failed the exam, or I didn't pass the exam, or whatever, is that, at the end of the day, I'm not just a business person. I'm not just somebody who writes exams or writes books or anything else like that. I'm a rounded person. And if I'm failing in one part of my life, I'm probably picking it up in another. And sure, thanks be to God, while life is short, it's long enough too, we can do an awful lot in it.
Excellent. I think, Jennifer, I see you coming in. You want to come out, take over? I think there's a question from Siobhan. Do you see that, Jennifer?
Yeah, Siobhan. I do, yeah. Siobhan asked a question on any tips for a career pivot.
Yes, and I would say, first of all, is to handle that with excitement. I've had to pivot a number of times within the business, which is effectively the same thing. I think that if you're willing to do it, Siobhan, I think that is one of the most employable things of all, because in effect you're disrupting yourself. And disruption is the name of the game at the moment in many ways. It's been a buzzword for a while, but now it's taken on so much more meaning. I would say that it's important to, again, just like I said, I think the other person who asked a question, you might just remind me, Jennifer, the person who asked a question, I thought she was Jennifer too, but I can't, the very first person who mentioned.
Maureen.
Maureen, sorry.
Maureen.
So just in I think it's one of the most employable skills at all, but just like I said to Maureen, is that acknowledge that it's not easy, and you have to, again, teach people to now look at you in a different way. So I'll just briefly, again, to dip into my own experience on this. I was known as like Susan the economist, Susan the financial trainer, Susan the person who wrote books about economics, like finance. And then suddenly I was Susan now who worked with teenagers. And how did that match? And I had to kind of, you know, teach the people who were my stakeholders broadly, to understand that I was now doing things in a different way. But to promote that is rather than, you know, okay, something didn't work and now moving to a new thing, is that's a fresh approach. Is that, okay, we now see that there's a new opportunity here, or that there's ways in which we can add value to a different demographic that we didn't think about before. So 3 things I would say is, number 1, approach it with excitement, and the world welcomes it, Siobhan. It really does. I mean, pivoting and disruption and moving in a different direction and having the energy and the willingness and the excitement of doing so is a great thing. But acknowledging that from your own point of view, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, which is why most people won't, and why you will succeed, because you're different. And just make sure that you're taking care of yourself along the way. And all of the letters apply here, like every single one of the 6 letters, they all apply here. But also, it's just important as well to acknowledge that you will have to teach the people around you how to think of you in this way. And that can be done. That can be done with a fresh approach, a fresh, positive, looking forward, new opportunities. You know, pivot is a positive word. It definitely is. Now, I've also had to pivot when it wasn't, which is when I've had 2 business failures, which where I had to kind of pivot my way out of a spiral. I suppose maybe I'm mixing my metaphors there, but I was spinning around, I'll put it that way. And that in that case, I had to do the same. I had to say, right, something didn't work and we have to move forward here. And I think it's that fresh mindset is what really important. And the last thing I would say is talk to people who've done it and see what's worked for them. Role models, they're everywhere. They're on this call. There's loads of them on this call. So I would say, yeah, for sure. That's what I can suggest.